If you had Trevor Nowaski on your bingo card as the 53rd man, congratulations, you're a winner.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Matt Dery with you. It is another installment of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today is Wednesday, August 28th into Thursday, August 29th. Thanks for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Those of you watching and subscribing for free on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel, you see our guest on the screen today. We do these crossovers once in a while, and people go crazy for it because it's like a cult following at prideofdetroit.com. But yes, Jeremy Reisman, Managing Editor of POD, with us today. Locked On Lions, brought to you by Gametime. You download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Follow us on Twitter at Dery Speaks, at Locked On Lions, Matt Dery Facebook fan page. Mentioned before, the 53-man roster is set. 15 members of the Lions now are on the practice squad to break it all down today. Jeremy Reisman with us. We love this man. We love his site. And I haven't bothered you lately, but here you are.
Well, I appreciate you bothering me.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as well. I love what you guys are doing, what you're doing over here, and happy to talk some Lions football now that we're just less than 2 weeks away from the real deal here.
So to take us back, what happened? So the POD cast is back.
Yeah.
There was a lot of controversy on Twitter. What's going on there?
Yeah, we were canceled for 3 months, but then we kind of went back to the bargaining table with SB Nation. We worked out a really cool deal in which we basically got to return every single thing that we were doing before, and we've been up and running for about a month now, and so everything that you've grown accustomed to hearing from the POD cast is still there. And we got some extra offerings and some little bonus side things still to come down the pike. So really excited for the 2024 season.
All right. So let me ask you this. The bargaining table, was Laura Schlitt a part of those conversations?
Oh man, you know what? I should have brought her in because she can pound the table.
Jeremy Reisman, of course, with us, partners with Eric Schlitt, Ryan. We love all the crew at Pride of Detroit. So, roster kind of there was some interesting moves yesterday, Jeremy, just to give folks the news of the day today. We mentioned before, Trevor Nowaski, local kid, the linebacker, acquired via waivers from the Cardinals. So he's back with the Lions. Practice squad, a lot of familiar faces. I guess my first question, and we can run down some names, but Nate Sudfeld's not on that list, and Jake Fromm is. Lion fans love that.
Yeah.
But, does that surprise you?
It does surprise me, and not for anything that Nate Sudfeld did on the field. I think you could very much make the argument that Hendon Hooker rightfully won the backup job, and Jake Fromm rightfully earned a spot on the practice squad. But the Lions usually like to operate with a veteran quarterback in the room. And now you have two guys that are not very experienced behind your starter Jared Goff, and that's surprising to me. I get it, and I'm not necessarily against it. It just kind of bucks their normal trend here of having a guy, on the sideline with a clipboard that can kind of be that aid for Jared Goff. Now, I guess they're going to rely on their coaching staff to do that, and maybe Jared Goff has just grown to a point where he doesn't necessarily need that anymore. But it is a change in strategy that I didn't see coming, to be quite honest.
Well, I did say yesterday, this is the first 53. It's not the last. It's not the final. It's, so they're the Browns are going to unload somebody. They're not going to carry four quarterbacks the whole time. I wonder what the Tyler Huntley talks are like. Maybe Brad Holmes is talking to the GM in Cleveland. I don't know if that's the case, but do you think in the next few days, because we've got a little time, they do add a veteran there?
It'll be interesting because I think there's still, like you said, some roster moves to shake out. There'll probably be a spot on the 53 that opens up because of moving obviously I think we all expect John Kaminsky to move to IR. And so that might bring someone up from the practice squad, which will leave a spot on the practice squad. Maybe it is Nate Sudfeld. I don't know. We'll wait and see here, but I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in some sort of veteran, not a guy to compete for the backup job, not a guy to necessarily, push Jared Goff or anything like that, but just to have a veteran experienced voice in there to help guide both Jared Goff and Hendon Hooker, to be quite honest.
Tell me your reaction to yesterday. Let's start with the 53 man.
Yeah.
Again, well, sorry, 52 man.
Right.
Brad Holmes loves messing with us. So they start with 52 guys yesterday. Obviously, Lauren Strickland is a name that many fans go, wait a minute, this guy was playing at UIndy a couple of years ago.
Right.
But what else caught your attention?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that one. I think a lot of us didn't see Broderick Martin heading to IR as something that was necessarily going to happen. There were people talking to him into a locker room, and it didn't seem too serious. I think the positive spin on that is, though, that he's probably only going to miss around 4 games. Now, it's partially speculation on my part, but the other thing I think is, especially with the Trevor Nowaski thing, now they got 7 linebackers.
Yeah.
In that roster, which is very surprising to me. Maybe that is something that changes in the near future, but I was kind of early in camp. I was kind of early in favor of keeping 5 so that maybe you could keep a 4th tight end, a 5th running back, things like that. But they opted to keep 6. And now with Nowaski there and Ben Neiman, who I thought very much earned a spot with his special team deals. But that was surprising to me. And the tight end situation was surprising to me because even though I believe Parker Hesse was going to make the 53, it was very clear that he was their number 1 fullback option and a pretty good special teamer. I didn't view him as tight end 3 necessarily because, I mean, you looked at the way that they used their tight ends in the preseason and in training camp. It was kind of Shane Zylstra versus James Mitchell as the guy that was in there before, right after the starters. And turns out neither of them won a job, but both of them are back here on the practice squad. So maybe that's a competition that will kind of continue as the season goes on.
Jeremy Reisman with us, prideofdetroit.com. Best Lions information site out there. I hate when people call you guys a fan site because I think now you guys have graduated to higher levels. The wide receiver 4, spot. I mean, Isaiah Williams is there now and he's made it and well-deserved.
Yep.
How do you think that shook? And an interesting couple of names on the practice squad, which will be elevated, I would think, for week 1, right?
Yeah, you're probably going to see one of those guys elevated. But I think, yeah, if you're talking the initial 53, I think it shook out like most people expected it to after the preseason. Obviously, you went in thinking Antoine Green or Donovan Peoples-Jones was kind of going to win that big-bodied group. But unfortunately, Green suffers the concussion early in the preseason, and Donovan Peoples-Jones just didn't seem to put it all together for whatever reason. Now, obviously, they brought him back on the practice squad, which is a mild surprise to me because I thought maybe they were just going to kind of cash in their chips there and leave it at that. But they clearly see there's some sort of developmental potential there, right? Or at the very least, maybe they think he's the guy that knows the offense the best right now. And so maybe he's the guy that they elevate in week 1 while they get Tim Patrick and Allen Robinson. They're 2 practice squad additions here. Get them kind of in tune with the offense. Now, I do like what the Lions are doing here, though, because obviously I think a lot of people look at the position like, let's just add one guy and he's going to be our starter. The Lions don't really operate like that a lot of times. They're like, you know what? Let's attack the position hard and let's put 3 guys in that room, 3 wide receiver X, big-bodied guys, and let them battle out. Let them decide who's going to be the guy that starts for us or has an offensive role every week. And they do that with seemingly every position. It's all about competition. It's all about making each other better. And this is a really smart way to deal with a problem that admittedly was self-caused when they didn't re-sign Josh Reynolds. But I think they're doing all they can to kind of remedy that situation so that they're ready come regular season.
We mentioned before about Strickland. What did you like about him? Certainly he was kind of running around like crazy, playing all over the field. A hybrid role, a little Brian Branch role from maybe a year ago.
Right.
Makes the team along with Brandon Joseph. Pretty cool story.
Great story. I think he started maybe with the 3rd or 4th team to start training camp. And he would make plays here or there, a big hit that, there are a lot of big hits in this training camp. Particularly the Lions came out very physical, but he was one of those guys that was like, oh, he's just laying out everyone he can find on the field. But I think what probably won him the position on the 53 is exactly what you mentioned there is the versatility. He's playing safety, he's playing nickel, he can play, in the box, he can play deep safety coverage. And then obviously special teams is always really important. And when you're, a physical, hard hitting safety, that's exactly what they're looking for in special teams. So the Lions, I mean, you would never think that given how advanced this roster is from, 1 to 40, that they would have room to keep 3 undrafted rookies, but they're a team that's very much in belief that if you earn a spot. If you go out there and put in the work, we don't care where you came from. We don't care if you're a first round pick or a UDFA no one's heard of. You're going to make the roster if you put in the work. And so they very much continue to live by that kind of motto, despite the fact that they have a really good roster.
More with Jeremy coming up next. I want to ask him about the practice squad. We'll kind of go over some names and some interesting. It's all receivers. We could just go over the 15 receiver man. No, it's not all receivers, but it's close. We will do that next with Jeremy Reisman from POD after this. And Locked On Lions brought to you today by our friends at the Gametime app. Looking for tickets for anything, go to Gametime. It is the best. Gametime also has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I was talking to some friends last night. They braved the elements to go down late night to watch the Tigers play the Angels, got the tickets on Gametime. They asked me, oh yeah, what's the promo code and all that? I told them it's simple. You just put in Locked On NFL, you get $20 off your first purchase. So that's easy for the red hot now Detroit Tigers. Lions Rams September 8th, Sunday night. Jeremy will be there, but he'll be in the press box. But you want tickets, get them at Gametime. It really is the best. They got super deals. That view from your seat is fantastic. That feature there. Check it out at Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL, like I said before, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create the account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Jeremy Reisman with us, managing editor at prideofdetroit.com. You're looking for Lions news throughout the day, updates. I love the trackers that they use, whether it was the roster, whether it was the trade deadlines, whatever it is. Jeremy Reisman and the crew there, Eric, Ryan, everybody, I'm forgetting people, do a fantastic job. All right, so it's weird. I was just looking at this before. So Lions have not announced that DPJ is on the practice squad, yet all reports indicate he's there. Allen Robinson, Tim Patrick, of course, Tom Kennedy. Tom Kennedy's never leaving. He's the mayor of Allen Park.
He really is.
I mean, so like, what's your take on week one? Who's going to be out there? How do you view all of this?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'm very eager to ask Dan Campbell his thoughts himself, because it is, to me, it's a balance of how quickly you can get these new guys in the room ready and acclimated to the not only the offense, but to Jared Goff, right? And I look at a guy like Tim Allen. I'm mixing up all the guys.
You don't want him out there.
No, I don't think you want Tim Patrick. Tim Allen Patrick. No, Tim Patrick. He's gone through a lot of quarterbacks, right? In his time as Denver, he had 6 or 7 guys throwing to him in a 4-year period, and so it makes me wonder if maybe he's really good at acclimating to new quarterbacks in the room. He's been around a long time. Allen Robinson has obviously been around 10 years too. He's coming home. He's a Detroit native. So, like I said, I do think I like the idea of just adding a ton of competition and seeing who outright wins it. But I do think, there's a relatively good chance that because Donovan Peoples-Jones has been here since last November, that he's going to know the offense best. He's going to have a little bit more rapport with Jared Goff. And even though I don't think he had a particularly good summer, he could be the guy that's out there week one. But I wouldn't expect that to necessarily last very long if he is.
How surprised are you that James Mitchell was not picked up on an active roster? That one, when I saw his name today, I was a little bit surprised.
I would agree. A lot of times people are just going to look at, a 5th-round draft pick that probably fell that far because of an ACL. Let's take a shot on this guy. I was a little surprised he cleared waivers, but then again, I think we all tend to think everyone is going to get claimed on waivers, and what, like 30, not even 30 guys, I think, got claimed this year. So less than one a team. But yeah, I mean, it's good to see him come back as the Lions, hopefully try to continue to develop him. We've seen the Lions develop guys that sometimes take 3 or 4 years. And so this is year 3 for James Mitchell. He'll still continue to get that work in with, I think, a really good coaching staff there, and maybe get an opportunity to actually show up and play a little bit, because, there are only 3 tight ends in that room, and one goes down, and now they have 2 guys in that practice squad that they can tap. And I think there's chances are pretty darn good that at least one of him or Shane Zylstra is going to be in the lineup at some point this year.
We knew Kyle Pecco was going to be on the team in some sort of way. Obviously, you can elevate players from the practice squad until you can't.
Right.
But he's a guy that I think will eventually be on the active roster based on, you mentioned Broderick Martin, and we just don't know about DJ Reader either.
Yeah. I think at this point it would be optimistic to believe that DJ Reader is going to be ready for week 1, although they said, week 2 was kind of their original plan to get him ready by. So is it unrealistic to say maybe he's a week ahead of schedule? No, not necessarily. But Pecco's a guy that they really liked in all of training camp. He played pretty well. I mean, he got the veteran treatment of not even playing a single snap in the preseason. So they very clearly valued him in one way or another. So I would be very, very surprised if he wasn't at least, given the temporary elevation on week 1, if not signed to the 53-man roster by the time that Sunday rolls around against the Rams. So you're definitely going to see him on the field that night.
You look at the edge room, and obviously it's Aiden Hutchinson, and then it's everybody else. Two-part thing for you, Jeremy, because you've been down there and see it. Marcus Davenport, healthy, and do you think he's the guy, obviously? And then 2, you got 2 guys in Agude and Ukwu who I think will eventually contribute. Which one do you like better?
Yeah, to start with Davenport, I mean, he's looked kind of like a rock star, like not necessarily a 10, 15 sack a season guy, but a guy who looks like he's on a mission, has been healthy all of training camp and has made a difference and has been locked in to that starting role. So yes, I think he is your week 1 starter, assuming nothing happens between now and week 1 here. As for Agude and Ukwu, really cool developmental guys. Agude is a guy who might kind of learn that Sam linebacker role that they can't seem to find a backup for Derek Barnes. So many names flowing through my name over the past 72 hours. Yeah, I mean, they tried, obviously, James Houston there. It didn't work out. I think Agude, they just want a little bit more time to develop that role. And then, maybe he does see the roster. Ukwu, to me, is maybe a little bit more of a long-term guy, but he has a lot of potential. He was drafted by the UFL. So, if it's clear people see the potential in there. And obviously, he had a sack in every single preseason game. So, I don't know if I would necessarily expect to see him in the lineup this year, but he's a guy that they're going to hold on to and hopefully develop into at least a part-time role there.
You mentioned before about Allen Robinson, the pride of Orchard Lake St. Mary's. The last couple of years has been rough for him. I think this is a nice story. It'd be nice, playing for the Lions. I just don't know how much gas is left in the tank there,
Yeah, I mean, if you were to just kind of look at the stats, he's 4 years, I think, removed from an 1,000-yard season, and since then it's been like 400, 200, 200. And so, I mean, yeah, he's obviously past kind of that 30-year-old wall that people refer to with basically every position in the NFL, particularly the skill position guys. And it'd be unrealistic to expect him to put up 500, 600 yards, but he's a veteran that knows where he needs to be. He's a high effort guy. He's a good character guy. He can be a locker room leader. And so I think culturally he's going to be a pretty darn good fit. It's just a matter of, does he still have the juice out there to produce in a way that's meaningful? They're going to find out.
There are also a lot of receivers yesterday that got let go. And of course, and I'm sure you got inundated too with just, hey, they should sign Noah Brown. Hey, they should sign Terrace Marshall. What about this guy? What about that guy? And I've always cautioned, and this, Brad Holmes wants the culture fit. All the guys in the practice squad outside of Tim Patrick have all been here. So he knows them. I don't think he wants to dip his toe unless he really knows whether it's maybe a former Saint or a former Ram. Right. I'm gonna stick to what we're building here. Did you recognize that as well?
Oh, no question. And it kind of makes figuring out who he's going to sign a little bit difficult because it's hard to do a character evaluation from the seat of my pants here.
Sure.
But you ask people around. Yes. Reporters who cover some of these players. And that's kind of one of the first things I always ask is like, okay, who is this person when he's in front of a podium? Who is this person on the practice field? I can look up the tape and see what he does on the field, but what does he do when no one's watching? That to me is so much more important to this regime and really unlocks the key. If you're trying to figure out their next move, you're absolutely right. Like that is the primary filter. The first thing that this team is looking for. If you don't fit that, you're not even in the equation here. And so I think that's a really astute observation. And that's why I think Tim Patrick is like probably the most perfect of fits amongst all those wide receiver candidates out there. Now, obviously the injury concerns are what they are, but that's another kind of consistent thing with this regime, right? Is like, they kind of don't care. They kind of assume like, if we get a high character guy that puts in the work, they can overcome those injuries. And in some cases that has been true. In a lot of cases it hasn't been true, but we'll find out with Tim Patrick, and all signs out of Broncos camp were that he was playing pretty well.
It's basically a Josh Reynolds for Tim Patrick trade.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way I hear from Broncos, writers and fans over there is they're very similar players. And so very similar players and very similar people. And so, yeah, it's just kind of trading, and it makes sense, from the Broncos point of view too, right? Like they're trying to get younger. Keeping a 30-year-old coming off 2 major injuries maybe doesn't make as much sense. Not that Josh Reynolds is much younger, but he's a guy that's a little bit more trustworthy in terms of just being able to stay on the field.
Coming up next, I want to ask Jeremy what things stood out for him at training camp, and of course the preseason in August. So we'll do that next. Jeremy Reisman with us from prideofdetroit.com. Follow him on Twitter at Detroit on Lion. All right. What stood out for you in this month as we're kind of wrapping up training camp in the preseason? Is there a takeaway or two that you just, you left the facility down there at 222 and said, man, this stood out to me?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm almost afraid to say this out loud because I feel like I've been burned by this take before. I really think I'm very optimistic about the Detroit Lions defensive line in a way that I didn't expect to be. We mentioned obviously Marcus Davenport playing pretty well, but obviously I think the biggest story out of maybe all of training camp was Levi Onwuzurike, putting his back injury completely behind him, taking over a starting role and running with it. And we didn't even get to see DJ Rader out there. And Aleem McNeil is still improving in my opinion. Like I thought he had a monster of a camp, and Aiden Hutchinson is who he is. Like he is one of the best pass rushers in the league. And so obviously a lot of things have to go right? DJ Reader has to look like his old self after another torn quad. Marcus Davenport has to stay healthy, and Aleem McNeil needs to take that next step. Josh Pascal also, it would be nice if he took a next step. But if I'm looking at that starting 5 guys out there, I'm pretty happy with it. And if they can reach the potential that I think they will, that is, it's a huge difference, right? It's the biggest difference in the world. We kind of hyper focused on the offseason about all the additions in the secondary, and actually have some questions about that because we haven't really seen all of them together much at all.
Yeah.
There's so many injuries that they were dealing with in training camp. And so to me, that's still a very big question mark, but my confidence level in the defensive line definitely rose from, I would say, like a 4 out of 10 to maybe like a 7 or 8 out of 10.
It's interesting. You just brought up the cornerback room. No real major surprises, I didn't think, yesterday.
Sure.
Certainly Khalil Dorsey. The Stephen Gilmore thing is interesting. They stashed him all year last year, and now he's not even back. But how do you? I think that D line, like you said, if it's improved, the secondary is already on paper improved, right? So they kind of go hand in hand. But how do you feel about that cornerback depth?
Yeah, I like the room, honestly, and I think maybe the thing that gave me the most ease is when all the injuries happened, and it was for a week. It was Kindle Vildor and Khalil Dorsey as your starting two, and
That's right.
That was scary at first, right? Like you're like, oh boy, this is basically what it looked like last year at the end of the year. And those guys held their own. They held their own against the Giants. They held their own against the Chiefs for most of that game. Like they gave up a couple big plays, but Patrick Mahomes was not having an easy day out there in that game. And so I got a little bit of faith in the depth there. Now, obviously, you want to see Terry Arnold out there. You want to see Carlton Davis out there. You want to see Ennis Rakestraw out there eventually, Brian Branch. And I think there's legitimate concern with some of the injury proneness of some of those guys. Like Carlton Davis is a guy who's dealt with a lot of injuries in the past, and the Lions play their cornerbacks very, very physical. It's a very physical style of play, which obviously probably lends itself to a little bit more injuries. So I do think the depth is going to be tested. I don't love the idea that the secondary in general hasn't had a lot of playing time together, because chemistry is important. We have to go back not too far in this team's past to see all of, the missed assignments and miscommunications and wide open guys and things like that. They could very well have that problem to start the year just by nature of not playing together much this summer. But obviously, like you said, on paper, this looks a lot better. And I think in the long term, it is going to look a lot better. There just might be some bumps in the road early.
You look at the division. Everybody's just lathering up in that Bears butter. They think Chicago's and Caleb Williams are the second coming. But how do you view it? And there are some picking the Packers to win this division. I'm not. I don't think you are. But how do you kind of look at it?
It's going to be a challenge, no doubt. To me, there's so many questions about the other team, right? Jordan Love, poor start to the season, great finish to the season. Which one is the real one? I know everyone wants to believe the way you finish is the way you're going to start the next season. That's not always how it works. The receiving core, lots of guys that could potentially be good. Not sure if anyone outside of maybe Jaden Reed has really proven anything beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're going to be a really good receiver in this league. But that defense, should be a lot better with a new defensive coordinator. They have weapons. Their offensive line always seems to be good no matter who's in there. And so the Packers are going to be competitive. I don't think they're on the Lions level. And then the Bears, I'm actually a little bit buying into the Bears hype. A little
really
bit. I am. Their defense was phenomenal towards the end of the year. And again, like, that's not necessarily how they're going to start, but I think they have really good pieces over there. The defensive line is pretty weak. Otherwise, though, I think, the linebacking core is outstanding. I like their young secondary. Offensively speaking, you can't deny the weapons there, right?
Oh, no.
They might have the best wide receiver group in football. They've actually, invested in their offensive line. And so to me, they're actually getting the order of operations right with their quarterback finally. They're not putting them into a Justin Fields type situation where he has to do everything. That doesn't mean it's going to work. And certainly not right away, right? It's also a new offensive coordinator, right? So it's very rare in which a new offensive coordinator, a rookie quarterback, all get it working right away. So to me, I think the season's going to play out a lot like it did last year with Chicago, where early in the season, there might be a lot of struggles. Towards the end of the season, I think they could be in contention with one of the better teams in the division. Vikings, to me, distant fourth.
Yeah. No, but I think the Vikings defense is still pretty good.
Sure.
I just think they're well coached.
I love both their coaches. Kevin O'Connell, I think, is a really brilliant offensive mind, and Brian Flores is a really brilliant defensive mind.
I mentioned before about the Bears. They did steal Scott Daly away from Detroit.
Sure.
So they're going to get all the info from Scott Daly. And Jeremy, I'm terrible. We have not discussed the most important guy on the team, Jake Bates. There's not a backup kicker on the practice squad. I'm stunned because I always reach for my kicker list.
Yeah.
And where is it? I might have thrown it away. No, I mean, all the guys from the last 4 years on this list.
Oh no.
And it's just one. I don't have to write 17 names down. How much does that surprise you?
A little bit. I wouldn't say Jake Bates has instilled a lot of faith and confidence in me with the way he's performed this training camp, but I know his preseason stats look pretty good, and he does deserve some credit for the kick he made in a windstorm in New York or New Jersey, and made a couple game winners both in camp and in preseason, but he's missed a lot of short ones. Last week, I think, he misses the extra point in the he misses the 30-yarder in the preseason game. Yeah. And then, next practice, I think he misses an extra point. And he just continues to miss on really short field goals. And that's the kind of inconsistency that worries me. You can say anything you want about, Dan Campbell being aggressive, and I don't think that's ever going to change. But at some point, you got to make your extra points. You got to make your short field goals, or it's going to hurt this team. And it's interesting to me how much patience they're showing with him, because they're kind of chalking it up, and understandably so. This guy didn't kick field goals in high school, didn't kick them in college, and so they believe there's a development to his accuracy that they can tap into. I just think it might take some time, which means those first few games on the schedule could be a little bit rough.
I mean, let's say they're down 27-21 in the opener and they score a touchdown with no time left. He's going to kick.
Yeah. Dan
Campbell's not going for two.
Right.
So there's some folks out there like, oh, they'll just never use a kicker. Come on now. Let's still be realistic here. So that's
if it's actually 27-21, at the end of that game, I'm going to be channeling this exact conversation, and I'm going to blame you if he misses a kick.
All right, I know. But that's your guy. You were the
Yeah.
Stafford guy. You were the original Stafford guy. So
Guilty.
you were on an island for a while. When everyone said, "Oh, good, glad he's gone," and you're like, "What are we doing?" So I read it.
I'm guilty. I'm guilty of being a Jared Goff as a bridge quarterback guy.
Oh, come on. I think we all were. So, but now Jake Fromm's the new GOAT. I mean, oh
That's
my
right.
God. I got people tweeting to me about, do you think he'll be number 2? I'm like, he played 5 minutes at the end of the 3rd preseason game. He's not Dan Fouts yet. Come on. Hey, all right, Jeremy. Well, keep up the great work, man. Thanks for coming on, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Sounds good, buddy.
You got it. There he is, Jeremy Reisman, with us from Pride of Detroit. Check out all of their stuff at POD. They do a great job. We're back with a Thursday edition of Locked On Lions tomorrow.